was so cool. That is really fun to watch. That's a really creative use of the trombone, by the way.
Yeah, I've always kind of liked the unnatural use of instruments when you can, you know. There's a few things that I've definitely learned technically, but a lot of things I've just kind of picked up and make the noises that I want to make and kind of shape the songs that I want to shape. So.
Well, thank you again for this. Was a very last minute thing, and the fact that you were available was very cool, and I definitely appreciate. I do want to ask your name for your solo project here, Gang Radio. How did this come about?
Yeah, so that actually started when I first moved here. I had a bunch of friends. We took a bike ride and had a whole specific route that we were going to take, and this is 20 years ago at this point. And one of the friends had a basket, and the radio was in the basket as we were riding along. I was kind of like, what's our gang called? And it was just like, oh, Gang Radio. And it's just like, and so that's where it became. At the end of the ride, we kind of talked about, let's all make a band out of this, you know, and make this whole thing become something. Of course, as things do, it didn't really exactly come together as that had planned, but I kind of always held on to the name. And some years later, I just kind of decided that's going to be my solo project, The Gang of One, and just myself. And yeah, that's the origins of the name. So.
I like it. That's a fun backstory. Okay, I'm going to geek out on your gear for a minute here because you, as those who are tuning in now and listening, it sounds almost kind of like I want to say soundtracky almost, like kind of movie ambient music, but you've got a lot of gear to make that happen. Yeah. If you could just kind of go through what all you've got here, because there's some really interesting stuff. Like I don't even know what this one on our left is called.
Oh, the small?
The black disc here.
This is just a tongue drum. Haven't used it yet in this set, obviously, but yeah, just a fun little drum that I've got a contact mic connected to, so I can put that through the pedals, affect them any way that I want to. I've got my main kind of piece of gear here is a Giga delay. I've had this for a long time, just about 17 years or something like that. So just a really cool pedal that you can just make loops. You can make up to like a 23-second loop, so you can play for 23 seconds, loop that, and it just kind of comes back every 23 seconds. It plays the full loop. So that's a real big base of the sound, and just kind of layers on top of that. Usual feedback and distortion, which is a fun little noisy pedal that you can hold a note feedbacking the whole time while you play on top of it, still distorted. Especially cool with the trombone. Definitely takes away from the natural trombone sound, but it's kind of nice.
Yeah, it adds that sort of otherworldly thing that was happening there.
Yeah, and like you kind of described it as somewhat industrial. That kind of adds that decay to it where it's just not your usual orchestral sound of a trombone. Next one I've got is a delay echo pedal. This is just a fun one, lots of different kind of echo effects, and I've always been kind of really bigly influenced by like dub music, dub and reggae and all that. Just the echo effects that they've always had in that kind of music has just always kind of influenced some of the sounds that I wanted to produce, especially using kind of horns. Not necessarily a reggae vibe as far as what I do, but yeah, like you said, it's kind of it is more kind of cinematic and.
Yeah, it's now that you mentioned that I can hear some Thievery Corporation coming in here. I get it.
Yeah, nice little harmonist where you can 2 octaves up and down, and so I've got like 3 layers of trombone if I'm playing through that. So I've got the octave highest, middle octave or middle note, and then the octave below. So that really kind of fills out the sound. As far as a solo artist, it doesn't always sound like it. You know, somebody described me once as kind of a solo Godspeed You Black Emperor. That sort of deal where also kind of cinematic and like, especially the instrumental aspect of it all. A chorus pedal that just kind of makes it sound kind of robotic, I guess, a little bit. And then a tremolo pedal that just kind of wavers the sound as well. So that's kind of the main gear that I kind of play around with. And, you know, I'm not necessarily specifically a technical kind of gearhead, or if that's what you call them, but I definitely like the sounds that they produce.
And you have an interesting sort of slide for your guitar that you were.
Yeah, so this one's a EBO, just kind of electric, just vibrates the strings, and that just kind of gives it a kind of otherworldly sound as well. Sometimes use a screwdriver to give a whole other effect, and yeah, all the little toys that you can just play with to make sounds. Yeah.
I love that you have such a wide range from a screwdriver to that's you have something very technical to very not technical that's just found in most people's junk drawer.
Probably use a pencil as well, or just any sort of flat surface just to kind of bow it in effect like that. But yeah, that definitely gives it an industrial kind of effect to it as well. So yeah.
Very fun. So when you're composing though, and you're trying to create the sounds, I imagine there's some element that's just sort of messing around and seeing what sounds are created, and some is very intentional and thought through before you even touched it. What combination is happening here?
Yeah, to be totally honest, a lot of the gang radio stuff is all just improv, and so like everything's not really planned out often. I did start the first piece with a loop that I just started when we were sound checking. Decided, cool, let's use that, and just kind of go from there. But with a lot of the process, it is just kind of starting a drone, some sort of base layer, and trying to find what kind of fits in there. And usually it kind of comes to me pretty quickly, and just something flows pretty easily. Sometimes not, but sometimes you will learn from the mistakes, and you make those mistakes into something else. So just turning mistakes into beauty and that sort of thing.
How do you determine what is a mistake and what is something that's beautiful that you want to keep in there? Like, where do you draw that line? Because sometimes mistakes can end up sounding beautiful, so it's where do you define that?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely classically trained in some aspects of life early on in my career as a musician, that sort of thing, and just schooling. At a certain point, I kind of tried to get rid of that box. But even still, there are the roots of this note kind of matches with this note, you know, complementary notes and that sort of thing. Sometimes I'll hear something that I play and it's just like, that's, and especially with trombone where you got the slide and it's very slight variations that can make it either minor, major, half step, full step, that sort of thing. So just kind of, yeah, I don't know. It just all kind of comes and it just goes, and I just hope for the best as far as it all goes. And again, like the mistakes, you just kind of, you shift it into something else and, you know, just make it go. But yeah.
When did this all start? Like, when did you officially decide this is my solo thing versus I was just kind of messing around?
Yeah. I think the first time that I played out with it was, maybe about 15, 14 years ago, somewhere around there. Time is a weird thing when you think about it, and it passes by quicker and quicker as you grow older. But I think it was about 14 years ago or something like that. And it was just kind of a lot of times just spending time at home, sitting in a bedroom, playing a song, and just, or in the basement, whatever house that I was living in that had musical equipment around. And just started kind of with that pedal, just building loops and kind of making something that I wanted to hear, but not necessarily what I heard was being made by a lot of other people and things like that. So eventually I came to the point where it's like, yeah, I'm ready to present this. I'm okay with it. I think at that point I did write a couple songs that were just kind of, I know what I'm going to do here, but I've done a lot of projects in the past that have just been improv based. So being comfortable with the flow, whatever happens, and just kind of build something that's great, and energy, everything else. And yeah, this project especially has just been with the cinematic feel. I've always felt it's nice to just kind of close your eyes with it, and whatever movie kind of passes by your eyelids while they're closed is a great way to go. Hopefully it never gets like too scary or anything like that. No horror films, so that sort of thing, but it's generally a pretty pleasant ambiance as far as I feel.
Yeah, you mentioned sort of improv, which brings to mind, of course, jazz music. That's very improvisational. Do you have any, because you mentioned classically trained, do you have any specific jazz training?
Yeah, I definitely played in jazz band a handful of times. I did play jazz band here at PSU for a short while. But yeah, again, like I definitely have a lot of the knowledge and just kind of the upbringing and book of knowledge as far as like music composition and everything else like that. But yeah, it's all kind of inherently in there still. So I definitely love jazz because of that aspect. Really, like I did play in orchestral band and that sort of thing in high school, but a teacher suggested I do jazz band just because he knew I played other music outside of trombone and that sort of thing, and played in punk bands and things like that at an early age. So opening up and having the freedom, it's just like, here's a solo, do whatever you want, you know, try to stay in this key. But yeah, and so that was a really great thing, and still love jazz music. I still love pretty much any type of music. There's something to find out there. So
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of living here. There's all kinds of genres of music out there for sure. Now, your specific genre of music, though, when you're trying to book a gig, doesn't fit as neatly into a category as most booking agents look for, where they're trying to find, you know, like a indie or hard rock or jazz or whatever. It's listening to your music, I imagine, is a interesting sort of thing to try and place and book. How does that work out for you?
Luckily, I've known a lot of people over the years of playing music, and so there are a group of people that are aware of kind of what I do and what the sounds kind of generated are. So yeah, a lot of times it's people that are aware of me and just kind of book me for gigs. It's always nice to have a show where you don't have just the same music, you know, like I like multi-genre gigs and things like that, where you really get a taste of everything. You don't have a specific crowd coming out for this one thing. And a lot of the projects that I have played in and still play in are still kind of difficult to be like, well, this is exactly who we sound like, you know. We try to avoid a box, and just we have so many influences that are coming from all of us that it's hard to put it in one place, you know. So
Right, that definitely is one of the things I appreciate when I'm listening to music, when you have something that is hard to categorize, because then you know it's something different. And anyone who's into music is always looking for something different to listen to.
that's what they say. That's what they say, but I know people do enjoy also having some place to be like, this is what this sounds like, and I like this sound, so I'm going to stick with that. But always encouraging people to open up their minds and listen to whatever comes out. And the beautiful thing about radio is just kind of skimming through, and you stop on something and you hear something that you never would have heard before. So it's a beautiful medium, and yeah, appreciate you guys doing all what you do. So
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. So let's hear some more music. so cool. It's amazing how quickly time goes when you're kind of in that almost like, it feels almost trance, like hypnotic sort of sound. Like if you've ever done those things where they hit the little chimes and whatnot, it has that vibe. Yes.
It can be tough to kind of keep track of time especially while you're improvising things and like just making it happen. So yeah, it definitely flies though, right?
Right. Like we're only like less than 9 minutes left in our show. So want to make sure we get to plug all the things and share all the cool links, tell everyone where they can find your music.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely got a Bandcamp page, so just gangradio.bandcamp.com. There's Instagram, gang_radio. You can find me there. I also play in a few other bands that Masonique is one. That's kind of a synth-driven. Somebody described us as what? I can't even remember honestly at this point. I'm on the spot. But Masonique, we do have a show coming up on February 16th, a couple weeks at the Coffin Club. I also play bass in a band called Masseter, Masseter, and it's kind of a punk, giallo kind of horror punk, if you will. Not exactly Misfits, but they're kind of different themes and all that. I also play bass in a band called Antikythera. That's definitely more heavier kind of doom kind of stuff. We're all kind of playing out at some point, but Masonique is the next one with the gig. So yeah, and that's MASONIQUE. And yeah.
Where's the best place for people to go to find your music?
Bandcamp is probably the best one, I'd say. You can definitely go to Spotify. It's all linked to Spotify, Apple Music, and iTunes, all the places that you stream music, I guess. So it should be up there. So I do have a few albums out. Most recently, there's one called Forward Thinking. I released that in October this last year. So, and I got another one kind of coming up in near future. But yeah, that's definitely a good, proud album I'm really proud of recently, the Forward Thinking one. So definitely find that on Bandcamp, and yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the process of putting together an album for this kind of music. Like, do you just, I can think of several routes it could go when you're trying to record this kind of music. Yeah. I'm curious which route you're taking.
Yeah, with this one, I definitely did it more kind of late night, just with headphones on and guitar kind of going into the recording device, and just started layering things that way. So this album is definitely more kind of conceptualized as far as how it was put together, versus probably half the songs are more kind of improvised, kind of like all of this, and just kind of starting a place, you know. And generally they're all just kind of one take with some of those songs, so it's just kind of one layer of everything that I put into that take, you know. So a little bit of editing here and there, just kind of cutting it off at a certain point where it's just goes on forever instead of letting that happen. But yeah, the process really has just been kind of, you just start playing, and then what comes out, and like hopefully you get enough pieces that you can either build upon later and just kind of add layers to. So sometimes just having guitar drones for a full take, and then coming back with like trombone on top of that or other instruments just to kind of balance it out and fill it out. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, again, this style of music, it's very unique in itself, and you've got all these cool effects and instruments and things that you're using in different creative ways, but it's quite a contrast to the other genres that you play in the other bands.
Yeah, definitely more structured than all the other bands, and yeah, but that's the nice thing about this one. It's just a release, you know. It's a release of energy, and no matter how long it's been between playing a set or just kind of practicing, that sort of thing, it just releases everything that's kind of pent up throughout the time leading up to that point. And definitely, you know, music's a healing factor, and has its ways of just kind of releasing all the negative energy. Sometimes it could be negative energy that is holding the music together, but it still releases something in a better way than breaking glass, breaking whatever, something that just doesn't need to be broken, you know. While there's a lot of things to be fixed, you know, there's music's a definitely healing factor of all of it. So.
Yeah, it's a very healthy outlet for sure. it's interesting, the way you describe it is very similar to how punk music gets described too, when you're talking about the outlet and the negative energy and where it all goes. I know we talked a little bit before going on air, mentioned about first concert you went to and whatnot, and that's kind of your punk root. So can you tell me a little bit about, first of all, the first show you went to, and then how your punk roots sort of evolved into this?
Sure. Yeah, so, this was, I was probably 8th grade, maybe, somewhere around there. This is in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I mostly grew up. And there was this just kind of all-day punk fest, and it was like a band called Blatherskite, which is like kind of a big metal band of the time. Ice Nine, not this Ice Nine from Portland that we all are aware of as well, but there was Ice Nine in Indianapolis, all that sort of stuff. And parents didn't allow me to go specifically, but I jumped in a van with other friends and went down there. I got interrupted at the punk show, sitting in the back seat, smoking a cigarette, and my dad walks in and picks me up by the back of my shirt and kind of pulls me out. So that was my my first show experience, really. But
It's a very punk rock thing to do, to like leave without your parents knowing, and then of course even more so getting pulled out of the show.
I don't know if that part was so punk, that was a little embarrassing, honestly, but that's all right. I was able to live past it, so here we are now. So.
But again, how did it evolve from going to punk shows into what you play today?
Yeah, that's really just kind of a long arc of a journey from, working in music stores over the years and being exposed to so much different music and not just sticking to the punk rock, or not sticking to any particular genre per se, but, my parents also had a fairly good record collection when I was growing up, so I had options to pull from. And music has just kind of always struck a chord in me. And I remember sitting at home with big headphones on while my family sat across on a couch watching TV. I was sitting in the corner, listening to the stereo, listening to Beatles records and things like that, and just blowing my mind with all the songs that I heard, all the different kind of ways you can make music, and all the different types of music that there is. So, yeah, it just really took. I enjoy playing different types of music, but this, again, is just so free that you don't have to think too much about it. So
That's very cool. I'm going to do a quick time check on us. All right, we've got exactly a minute. So before we run out of time, quick station drop for everyone here. You're tuned into KPSU, Portland's college radio station. And thank you to Portland State Television, also known as Sub Basement Studios, and our wonderful camera people putting us on YouTube, as well as our sound engineers. Before we take off, can you do a quick station drop for us? This is Ghost Radio and listening to KPSU.
This is Gang Radio. You're listening to KPSU. Thank you so much.
Right, well, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it and sharing everything with us.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.